Hello there, welcome back to Beauty Bee and welcome to a little bit of a palette collection video. I'm kind of combining a palette collection with a ranking-ish of my palettes. I didn't feel like I could definitively rank my palettes, however I did break them into some categories and we'll talk about those categories from least favorite to most favorite. So there are, I want to say like 23 palettes to talk about today. Let me get that number actually. There are 26 palettes to talk about today. So let's get straight into it, starting with the least favorites category. These 3 palettes, I could see myself decluttering. I don't think that the formulas on these are impressive. I don't love the color stories. So the first in this category is the Beauty Bakery Sour You Doin'. This is a 9-pan palette. I got this in a BoxyCharm. It is a very warm toned color scheme, which not my favorite. And the quality of the mattes, especially in this palette, is just not quite up to par. There are some shades that I really like in here. Specifically, I really like Sangria, which is this white pink, as well as Icy, which is the gold in the lower right corner, but overall, not super impressed. Cherry Crush from Colourpop is very one note. It's very pink and purple, and they're all the same color. No depth, there's no variation. I feel like all of these colors are the same. And the quality is okay on this palette, but it's nothing special at all. And really, some of these shades are a little bit iffy and a little bit on the chalkier side. So, not a big hit. And then finally, we have Miss Bliss. Now, I have mixed up all of my palettes from this collection, but this one was originally the peach and pink. There is not a whole lot of depth in here either. I don't love peaches and pinks, and I found the formula on these shadows to be just okay. So for now, all of these are sticking around, but they are in my lowest ranking category. Next, we have just one palette. This is the Maybelline City Mini Palette in Matte About Town. This would have ranked higher up at a different point in time, but I've pretty much used up all the shades that I liked out of this palette, and now I have this pink shade, which is useful and I do enjoy, and 2 browns that aren't. So yeah, this is almost a victim of itself being so good, in that I've used up all of the other shades and I'm just left with the poorer performing, deeper ones that aren't quite my favorite type of shade. Okay, I zoomed in between the last category and this one. Hopefully this is a little bit more visually appealing. These palettes are ones where the color story really isn't my personal favorite, but the quality is okay. There's nothing incredible here, but it's more than workable. It's relatively easy to use, you know. And the 2 that fall into this category are the e.l.f. Bite Size Quad. This one is in Berry Bad. And it's a pretty one-note berry palette. And then we have the Teddy Girl palette from Butter London. Okay, hopefully I'm actually staying in frame. Gotta keep an eye on that. But the other palette in this category is Teddy Girl from Butter London. And this is a very modern Renaissance looking color scheme. The quality on this is fine. The quality on the e.l.f. one is fine. But, you know, they just don't really spark joy. This next category has some really low lows and some really high highs. These are just palettes that are really inconsistent for me. Let's start with In a Trance and Aura and Out. These are the other two palettes from the tie-dye collection from Colourpop, and I really like the color stories of both of these. Let me open up the other one. I really like the color stories of each of these, and there are individual shades in each of these palettes that I think are great. For example, I love this mint shade from Aura and Out. I think that this light purple from In a Trance is beautiful, as is this sort of white iridescent shade, but the quality isn't great, and there really isn't a whole lot of depth to either of these, which I knew going in. That was not a surprise to me, but it was a little bit surprising just how difficult some of these shades are to work with. But I love the idea of them. And then this Golden Hour palette from Beauty For Real. I think the quality on this is overall okay. I really do like these more neutral shimmer shades. So Reflection, Pink Sands, Solstice, and Golden Ray. They are these really pretty sheer topper shades that you can build up a little bit more with glitter glue. But there's something about this palette that just throws me off and doesn't make me want to reach for it at all. And I think that a big part of that is this Infinite shade, which is this glittery blue. These warm toned neutrals are not what I want to pair, especially Pink Sands and Reflection with. So, though there are some, like we talked about earlier, high highs with these pretty shimmery shades, the mattes and then this blue really bring it down a few notches in my estimation. Next up, we have neutral palettes that are a little bit on the boring side, a little bit on the warmer side, and I just don't use often enough. I have no complaints about the quality of these three palettes. I think they are all actually quite good. I just don't think they're that unique to what I already have, and they're not quite my preferred type of neutral. So let's start with the Vizier Palette. This is the Petite Pro 1, and I, again, like the Colourpop palettes, I've kind of mixed and matched between the Vizier Petite Pro palettes, but this is a slightly warm-toned neutral palette. It is a really good little basic palette. That's true for all of the palettes in this particular spread, but it's nothing super interesting. It's nothing to write home about. I like it. I think that if I had a smaller collection, I would really, really appreciate this. I just have these neutrals other places, and I mean, these are a nice version of those neutrals, but it just doesn't deserve to be any higher on my ranking. Very similar story for this Pyt Beauty palette. It is a great little palette. I think that the packaging on this is quite cute. No complaints about the quality, just not that exciting. I actually think that the e.l.f. Pumpkin Pie, I believe, yes, bite-size quad is maybe a little bit better quality than the Pyt. I feel like the shimmers here are actually pretty blingy and surprisingly nice for a $3 quad. It's just, again, not really my color scheme. Pretty when I wear it, but not something that I feel super drawn to. It's a very strong like, not a love in my book. Now we're getting into some things that are a little bit more colorful. I think this is the first category where if I were to lose any of these palettes, I would at least very, very strongly consider repurchasing. I think the next two categories I would absolutely go out and buy replacements, but for these 5 palettes, I would at least seriously think about it. I don't know if I would necessarily pull the trigger. So let's start with another Vizier palette. This is the Petite Pro 2. And I think this one is just a little bit more interesting than Petite Pro 1. This has this coral red shade as well as some purples. The shimmers in this are a little bit more on the rosy side, and this interesting sort of lavender taupe shade. The quality on this one I think is really good. I like the color scheme. I really have nothing bad to say about any of the palettes in this spread. I really do like this. Next we have this e.l.f. quad. This is in Rosewater. This is a really solid little cool toned quad. I love how neutral it is while still maintaining that little bit of pink. I feel like this is appropriate for practically any situation. It's super workable, super easy. I don't use it quite as much as I should, but I do really, really like the look that this can give me. And I would be a little bit bummed if I were to lose this. It's a good little palette. This Profusion Glam palette, I bought mostly for the mirror. I was trying to film videos without having a mirror that could stand by itself. So when I saw this for like $5 at Walgreens and realized that it had a mirror that could stand up, I was in. I didn't really care that much about the eyeshadow. But this is a surprisingly nice little palette. I really like Superstar and Recharge, which are this sort of greenish toned gold, and then this pink. I think those are beautiful. The mattes in this palette are nice, and there are some interesting little pops of color with the olive, the purple, the yellow, and the orange. The quality in this palette is surprisingly nice. I am blown away every time I use this that this was a $5 palette. I really do like this. It's a shame. I don't think this is available anymore, and I think that Profusion should consider bringing it back. It's a really, really nice palette. Two more Colourpop palettes in this category. First we have Cabana Club. This was one of their summer releases last year, I believe, and this is sort of a half neutral, half colorful, and I like the range of colors that they've gone. These warmer toned mattes that are not generally my favorite, but I think they go well with the colors that they've put in here. I like the variety of golds that they've added. I think the fact that there are two pinks is really nice. This blue is so, so pretty. And while these two shades down in the lower right are not my favorite, they are somewhat unique to my collection. And just overall, I think this is really pretty. It works quite well. And I don't know why this wasn't a bigger hit for Colourpop. I think it's a really, really nice little palette. But, you know, I shouldn't be complaining because I did get it on really good sale, probably because it wasn't a big hit for Colourpop. So it kind of worked out for me. And the packaging's really cute on this one. And then the last palette in this spread is Play a Jewel from Colourpop. Despite the name, this is also a half neutral, half colorful palette. I actually might even go as far as to say that it's a 2/3 neutral, 1/3 colorful palette. I feel like the color is really restricted to this little 12 pan, but the quality in this is nice. I do like how it expands my color options a little bit. I mean, I don't have anything that's super similar to this blue or this green anywhere else in my collection. Same story for this red. It's a nice set of colors. I do wish that they had added a little bit more color up here, especially with a name like Play a Jewel. I'm sure that makes it easier for a lot of people to get a complete look from this palette. And I definitely use the neutrals too, so yeah, I really do like this. This is a nice, nice palette. I right, we are in the next to highest category now. Everything here I really, really, really like. If I were to compare these to like a dating situation, these are those people who are perfect on paper. You maybe have messaged back and forth a little bit, and it seems like the energy is really great, and you get together and you realize you are friends. Just the spark isn't there, but you become really, really good friends. So here is my other third Vizier palette. There are no Vizier palettes in the top 4, that top category. But here is what the Petite Pro 3 looks like. Again, these are mixed up a little bit, but this is pretty close to its original configuration. I just think that the more spring tones in this are a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting, and a little bit more my personal style than what was in the Petite Pro 1 or the Petite Pro 2. The quality across all 3 of these palettes is really consistent, but this is just my preferred color scheme. I think it's a really pretty palette. Next we have my NYX Ultimate Utopia. I have used the heck out of this palette, clearly. There are definitely times in the last 2 years that I've owned this palette where this would have been in that very top category. Right now it's not. I feel like that could almost change day by day. There are some really beautiful shades in here, and I love the color story. This mint is stunning. I really do like this blue. This gold is beautiful. And really, there's nothing in this palette that I dislike. It's just really, really pretty. It's good to solid quality. I would say that with the exception of these 3 shades, the quality on this palette is excellent. These 3 are just a little bit on the dry side, a little bit on the patchy side. They work fine if you're deepening up an outer corner or using as liner, but they're not the kind of shades you would want to use all over your lid. But I think this is really, really pretty. I feel like on a different day this could have gone into that top 4 category. Similar with this Natasha Denona palette, this is the Ayanna palette. This is a relatively new acquisition for me. I think I've had this for maybe 2 months. It is beautiful. It's a 5-pan palette. The quality is excellent. The performance is excellent. I love this color scheme. This is just quite similar to one of the very top palettes, and I think I like that breakdown of shimmer to mattes a little bit more. So even though this is a beautiful palette and I love having a full-size Natasha Denona palette, maybe that's silly, but I really do like that. This had to end up in the only second top category, not quite the first. This Pat McGrath Labs palette is very unique to the things that I have in this top category. It is quite a bit warmer than anything else I've ranked quite this high. It is stunning. The shades are gorgeous. I love the shine that these have. The performance is excellent. The only reason this isn't in the very top category is that it's a little bit more warm toned than I really prefer. If this was a cool toned neutral 5-pan, it would probably be the #1 palette. The formula on these is incredible. I think they still have this palette on the Pat McGrath website for like $14, and at that price I think it's a steal. Really impressed with this. And then the last palette in this category is Stone Cold Fox, and this is a great neutral palette. It's very cool toned neutral. I do think that there are some shades in here that could be a little bit more different. I think they could have gone further into purple and further into pink with these columns on the outside, but oh well, they decided to go a slightly different direction. I'm really happy with the quality of all of these shades. I'm really happy with the looks that I get. It's easy to use. feels pretty effortless to put together a look that I'm really happy with. I love this. I think it is excellent. I think this is one of the better Colourpop purchases I've ever made. I'm so happy with it. We have the absolute best of the best in my collection per my very, very subjective ranking on this day. There are 4 palettes here. These all are beautiful color stories. The performance is excellent, and these just spark joy. I really adore all of these. I would be very sad if I were to lose them, and I would definitely try to replace them. So let's start with the Lorac Fairy Tale Forest. This is an 18 pan palette. It has these slightly grungy toned neutrals mattes up here, which I think are super interesting. And then these 10 gorgeous shimmers. There are, I think, 2 or 3 distinct formulas among these shimmers, and it really allows you to build this super dimensional, sparkly, pretty look. I think these are gorgeous. I like that the color scheme on this is just a little bit colorful. It's not, you know, a rainbow bright by any means, but there's something a little bit more interesting than just champagne, gold, and brown happening in this palette, and I really, really appreciate that. It does get a little dirty, but I don't care. I love this, and I don't mind that it looks like it's used, because it is. I liked that Fairy Tale Forest so much that I ended up getting Mystic Oak, which is a mini that came out in the same holiday collection. I'm so interested to see what Lorac comes out with this year. If it's anything like last year, I think I'm going to adore it. So this is the palette that I was talking about when we were talking about the Natasha Denona Ayana palette, and how it's just kind of similar to a palette that was up a little bit higher. If you would like, I would do a video comparing those two more in depth, but I like a shimmer heavy look. This has 4 shimmers and 2 mattes, and I really like the dimensionality that these shimmers give. Like with the larger Fairy Tale Forest palette, there are here just 2 distinct formulas for the shimmers, and I really like how they combine into a variety of really, really pretty, soft, everyday looks, or you can go really smoky with this. It is incredibly versatile for this tiny little 6-pan palette that's the size of a credit card, and I'm very happy with it. And then the last 2 palettes we need to, again, talk about as a duo. These are the Child palette and the Mandalorian palette. These are the Star Wars collabs from Colourpop. I know that Colourpop has since put out an additional 2 Star Wars collabs, but these were the first, and, you know, where he goes, I go. And I think these are beautiful. I love how they complement each other. The quality on these palettes is top-notch. I think they did a really cute job with the design. The surrounds on the mirrors are really cute. And I think that the color schemes on these are so interesting. This is, this being the Child palette, is a green and neutral palette that doesn't go super swampy and grungy. It keeps to a little bit of a more cool toned green, which I think is very interesting and very unique, not just to my collection, but somewhat to the market as well. And then I love the combination of these silvers with these warm sort of rosy takes on brown, as well as this like golden marigold shade. I think it's really an interesting color combination in the Mandalorian palette as well. And they're interesting color combinations that actually work. Sometimes I think that the reason a color combo is interesting is because people know it's not going to actually look good on the eyes, but both of these work beautifully. And I think that brings me to the end of my gushing about these 4 palettes. I would love to know what you thought of this ranking. If you have any of these palettes and would rank them very, very differently, I would be very interested in hearing that and hearing your reasoning behind it. Thank you so, so much for watching. I really hope this was a fun video. If it was, please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope that I will see each and every one of you in my next one. Bye!